The three dots. Start recording.
Yes. Okay, a warm welcome to all. We're still waiting for some people to join the webinar, but sorry, apparently I was kicked out of the meeting. So my name is Helen Versluys. I work at Möbius. We are a consultancy firm with offices in Ghent, Brussels, Paris, and Utrecht. I'm part of an enthusiastic and growing sustainability and circular economy team at Möbius, and we assist governments at all policy levels in drawing up and also implementing circular economy and climate plans. And some of our recent assignments include outlining a roadmap for a circular manufacturing industry in Flanders, coordinating a participation trajectory involving local businesses, policymakers, citizen groups, researchers, and bankers, with the aim of developing an action plan to make the city of Mechelen circular by 2030, and also hosting learning networks on circular construction, on the cross-fertilization between social employment and circular entrepreneurship, and on circular procurement. And I'm very happy to welcome you to the first of 3 breakfast webinars, which Möbius organizes together with Circular Flanders, the Flemish Circular Economy Hub, consisting of a partnership of governments, companies, civil society, and the knowledge community. VVSG is the association of all 308 Flemish municipalities and cities, and Vito is an independent Flemish research organization in clean tech and sustainable development. The common thread throughout the webinar series is the question of how a region or a city can create the right conditions for the transition to a circular economy through so-called soft policy instruments such as communication, knowledge sharing, setting up of roadmaps, as opposed to hard policy instruments like legislation or taxation. So what is on the agenda for the next hour and a half? After an introduction on the governance essentials of the circular transition by Circular Flanders and Möbius, we'll listen to testimonials from the city of Malmö and Prato, and the webinar conclusions will be brought to us by ICLE, a global network of local and regional governments committed to sustainable urban development. The webinar will be recorded. Please mute your microphones. If you have questions for any of the speakers, be sure to let us know via the meeting chat. We will, if time permits, go through some questions together after the 2 city testimonials, but the speakers will in each case try to answer your questions after their contributions via the chat. And then without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Elmar Willems. Elmar is a long-standing policy officer at the Public Flemish Waste Agency. He's a member of the operational team of Circular Flanders, where he focuses on circular cities, circular area development, and brownfields. And he's also co-author of the book Lokaal en Circulair Werken aan de Toekomst, which translates Local and Circular Crafting the Future. Elmar, the floor is yours.
Yes, there we go. I assume that everybody has my screen in view, and so I can start my talk. So thank you, Helen. Thank you for the organizers to have this meeting, this partner event at the Green Week, and that we dive into the circular economy for cities and regions. That's a very important topic. So I'm part of Circular Flanders, which is in itself part of a broader movement and a concerted effort to tackle the circular economy for the region of Flanders. Those logos you see below actually indicate the importance of collaboration, of course, and the need for broad support amongst societal stakeholders. So I will present to you some of the main issues of the circular economy. It will sound familiar to most of you, but it might shed some light on the things that we think are crucial and of high importance for circular economy. So I'll present you the overall ambition, and in the second part I will outline the approach of Circular Flanders and the path that we are leading. So in my view, this slide and the following ones provide you some of the most important elements as such. Okay. Oh, there is a problem with my slide. No, this is the good one. Okay, this is a familiar picture probably, but I will show it anyway. I think it's so important. It was drawn by a colleague of us a few years ago, and it has reached a broad audience in many forms and in different languages. So it's an important picture. It shows the main goal to work towards a society without waste, where materials are being used and reused again and again to the best of our abilities, without negative effects on humans and the environment. It might regenerate our natural state of the world. It might regenerate our economic system that is under pressure, especially now in these days, in these COVID times. It will foster new perspectives for businesses, consumers, citizens, governments. Products, materials, and resources are being looped, linked, managed, contributing to the next level of sustainability. The next level of sustainability is a phrase that was quoted, used in the Elmar Willems Foundation reports, in one of the first reports that were on this topic. So it's really an addition and maybe in some cases a replacement or an enhancement of the sustainability discourse. So it might be unnecessary to say that we have only reached some sort of a recycling company, so we're in the middle somewhere at most. And on the global scale, this is even far too optimistic, probably. In Flanders and Europe, we're experiencing a basic and also more advanced forms of recycling. A recycling infrastructure that lessens the burden on the world's resources and provides jobs and services. But the challenge for Europe and for the whole world remains enormous. So let's have a look. Why in the first place do we want to achieve a circular economy? So this is one of the main reasons, one of the most compelling arguments to sustain our goal of moving towards a circular economy. It's the link with climate change. We know that materials are a big source of greenhouse gases. Here is the picture for Slovenia, Germany, and Flanders. We say that about 60% of all greenhouse gas emissions are related to the material use, the production of materials and products, waste disposal, treatments, goods, transports, the production of goods and fuels as well. So this is an important picture to know, to be aware of. If we zoom in Flanders, for Flanders situation, and we say, okay, we have about a material footprint of about 29 ton per inhabitant per capita each year. It's a raw material consumption of everything that we use in Flanders, and also everything that is being used in our to our benefit in other parts of the world. So it's a global footprint that we have as a Flemish citizen. So this is problematic because we want to reach a more sustainable level. We want to lessen the burden that we put onto the world's resources, and we think that we should move towards about material footprint of about 7 tons per capita. Also, equally, we should lessen our greenhouse gas emissions footprint, our carbon footprint, with a huge amount. So this ambition about 2050 is to move towards less carbon footprint and a lesser material footprint, with about 30% already in 2030, and then try and see if we can make it up to 50 or even 80% less carbon footprint. So this is a very important picture. This goes for Flanders, but it will be more or less the same for developed countries in Western Europe as well. That the areas of food production, building and construction sector, mobility and consumer goods account for the greenhouse gas emissions and the material footprint in a big way. So we have to diminish our residual household waste with about 25% in the coming 10 years. Company waste needs to go down with 25%. Incineration rates have to go down with 25% in the coming 10 years. Recycling rates have to go up until 77.5%. This is the task that we're heading for. So it's a huge task for us in Flanders, but for everyone in Europe and beyond, of course. So as a way to underline the problematic material footprint, I'll show you that there is a clear problem with raw materials and resources. Rare earth minerals and essential elements such as copper, silver are decreasing in a rapid pace. They're too little available, too expensive, of course, and only available in some countries dominated by Chinese or Russian companies or conglomerates. Not the least, the circumstances of mining and the effects on human health, equality, and the environment is disastrous. So we have to look out for other ways of providing us new raw materials. And one of the things that we really need to do is to use the urban mine as a source of raw materials. In 1 ton of cell phones, you'll find up to 50 to 150 kilograms of copper. You'll find 500 up until 700 grams of silver and about 300 grams of gold in each ton of cell phones, discarded cell phones. And which is, of course, far more efficient than a ton of ore, digging a ton of ore out of some hellhole elsewhere in the world. So let's follow this path and try to recycle more and more, of course. So there's another reason that we want to develop the circular economy. We see there's a lot of potential to gain new jobs, to gain on innovation, to have a better resilient economy. These socio-economic arguments cover a whole spectrum of the discussion. We will not get into this with my presentation at this moment, but it will come back in the detailed presentations on other cities. But what I'll show you here is the development of jobs in the sector of the circular economy. So there's been a research done, which has been published recently, that shows that the jobs in the circular economy are growing about 3 times more than jobs in the general Flemish economy. So it's a big indication, a good indication that we're on the right track and that the circular economy actually provides new jobs and that it's growing faster and faster.
Elmar, you have about 3 minutes left.
All right. And there's one point I would like to make, that in Flanders, but also in the rest of Europe, in regions of the rest of Europe, there's another reason to dig into the circular economy development. We're living in a densely populated area with traces of our industrial past, with polluted sites and high levels of soil contamination. And circular principles can help to take care of our open space, restore water cycles, establish green areas, stop using new greenfields and land. It urges us to reorganize and redirect our industrial activities and reuse the available former industrial sites, infrastructures and the built environment. So this is particularly important in Flanders, but the link between circular economy and spatial planning, sustainable land use and the revitalization of space and urban manufacturing within cities has risen on the agenda on the last years. And this is also a very important topic that cities and regions can cope with. They have something to say about the spatial planning of their area. Now, I'll not dig into this particular case, which is a a former dry cleaning company site in Mechelen. It's closely situated at the center of Mechelen, a middle-sized city in Flanders. It's heavily polluted, but it's regenerated for the well-being and the welfare of the area. So what's our path? At Circular Flanders and at many other agencies, we think that we have to have a profound change of our modern habits, our ways of production and consumption, and overall structures. So our society is in transition. This overview shows you that we need to build up new practices towards a new economy, phase out less desirable ways of working, and it means that we need to embrace new ways of thinking and doing and letting go of our old customs that we would associate with a linear, exhausting and polluting economy. We have indicated now that we're in a phase below today, in a phase of experimentation, accelerations, and the emergence. We're seeing the emergence of a circular economy, but it still needs to grow, and we still need to destabilize and to find other ways of working in the old economy. We need to keep this in mind, and it might be discomforting and challenging to let go of the old habits. At the same time, it might excite you and spark new ideas, support your feeling that things really need to be organized more sustainably, but we can do it. I will show you this one, very important in our approach in Flanders, that we think we need a bigger vision, a roadmap on a circular economy to guide our intentions, to guide our actions, which is in development right now. We will work on 6 strategic agendas, and we work with 7 policy and societal levers. I'll show you quickly what's that about. It's still in development. Of course, we have a long track working on circular economy and with different plans. But this is the first time that we're really aiming for a global circular roadmap for the whole of the region that will inspire strategic agendas on different topics, and there will be an exchange of ideas between the strategic agendas and the overarching vision for 2050. So these are the topics. Strategic agendas are circular construction, chemicals and plastic, water cycles, bioeconomy, food chain, and manufacturing. Those agendas work more or less in the same way. They are supported by Societal Pentagon, a societal group of different stakeholders that actually feeds into the strategic agendas, that works on the agendas, that develops actions, and that are linking each other with the different topics within the agenda and with other agendas. So we're almost at the end. This is our approach, and it might look familiar with different approaches in different cities or regions or countries like the Netherlands. But that's really important, that we have to work on themes, work on levers, accelerators for overcoming barriers, spreading good practices, and work towards a vision that will be established in the roadmap on circular economy. So I'm one of the 12, 13 people that are working in a team of Circular Flanders, but we're working together with about 100 co-workers and 30 organizations on a daily basis, which makes the circular economy so interesting and so complex as well. So what's that all about? The circular economy, it's about materials, products, bigger recycling infrastructures for new plastics or heat networks, textiles, etc., etc. But in the end, it's also about people that are doing their job, citizens that are willing to participate, especially in cities and regions. You have to get them on board, try and find their energy, try and use their energy with repair cafes, with building new places, schools, working on food losses, sharing mobility is an important topic. All these things can be done together with the people, which makes the circular economy so inspiring and important to us. Thank you. this is my contribution, and Ellen and the others will definitely dig deeper into a lot of topics that I've just mentioned.
Thank you, Elmar. And as mentioned before, if you have questions for Elmar, do not hesitate to share them via the chat. So Elmar has talked about what the basic conditions are for a circular transition, but you may now be asking yourself, how do I get started? And so first and foremost, it's important to have political support. The question is, how can you convince your government or city council, but also other crucial regional or city stakeholders of the importance of the circular economy? Well, it helps in our experience to let the numbers do the talking. And for the Flemish city of Mechelen, for example, we calculated the added value that can be realized by transitioning towards a circular economy. And the predicted annual GDP growth through circular economy amounts to 1%, which is significant if you compare it with a normal annual GDP growth of 2%. Another calculation that helps build support is one that shows the contribution of the circular economy to employment in your city or region. And here is an analysis we did for the Flemish city of Aalst, a city with approximately 85,000 inhabitants, where, assuming an intermediate scenario in which there is a partial transition to a circular economy, 100 to 800 new circular jobs can be created by 2025. We also investigated how many of those circular jobs could be done by disadvantaged groups in the labor market, and our estimation is that up to 51% of the circular jobs could be filled through social employment. It's also interesting to quantify the potential ecological benefits. Here we calculated for Ghent that fully realizing the circular economy could help save 550 tons of CO2 per year, which is the equivalent of building 55 wind turbines. And in addition, 167 kilotons of raw materials could be saved per year, or 7,255 full trucks. The good news is that to get a first idea of the economic and ecological benefits of the circular economy for your region or city, you do not necessarily have to resort to extensive studies. The calculations just shown for several Flemish cities were done using existing methodologies and figures, making extrapolations for the local level. These figures should not be considered as exact predictions, of course, but they do help to make the potential benefits of circular economy policies more tangible. Once you have political support, the question arises on which product groups, sectors, subsectors, value chains, or domains will I focus? And we propose the following three-step approach. First, we analyze key figures on the added value, the employment, and net experts for different subsectors or value chains. We also investigate what the CO2 and the material footprint of the subsector or value chain is. This assessment of both economic importance and ecological impact allows a first prioritization. Secondly, it's important to take into account what we have called the circular scale-up and social potential. Typically, this is more difficult to measure quantitatively, and here expert judgment comes in. A first element to consider is the circular acceleration potential. This acceleration potential of a value chain can be assessed by examining, one, whether there are opportunities to develop activities in the so-called inner loops, so repair, reuse, high-quality recycling. And secondly, whether there are trends that could contribute to a certain value chain moving more quickly towards the circular economy. Think of legislation making the application of circular economy principles mandatory, or support programs for circular innovation. As an illustration of this second phase in the analysis, consumer textiles may not come to the surface in the first quantitative economic analysis because production largely takes place outside Belgium. But this is a value chain that might appear in the second phase of the analysis, as it offers opportunities to develop local activities with those textiles that have reached the end of their first life. Think of repair, reuse, and high-quality recycling of used textiles. Another aspect that can be included in the prioritization exercise is the extent to which social employment can be created. And here it comes down to looking for those value chains where the circular transition involves labor-intensive process steps and requires manual labor consisting of easy-to-learn tasks. And then finally, it's perfectly imaginable that a value chain is relatively unimportant from an economic or environmental perspective, but nevertheless worthwhile to tackle as part of your circular economy efforts when you take into account its potential to enhance social cohesion or increase public awareness. Coffee grounds and bicycles are examples of such value chains with a high recognizability and therefore a high awareness raising potential. Next up in determining priorities is testing your top-down analysis of priority value chains against reality on the ground, against what is already happening in your region or city in terms of circular initiatives, and against where there is enthusiasm among stakeholders, albeit entrepreneurs, citizens, researchers, or financiers. Without going into the details, here is an example of a prioritization analysis Möbius did together with Vito for moving towards a circular manufacturing industry in Flanders. And on the vertical axis is the environmental impact represented by the materials footprint of subsectors. On the horizontal axis, their economic weight, using employment as a proxy indicator. And in addition, you can see the green and yellow squares representing the qualitative estimation of the circular acceleration potential. As a second example, an analysis for the city of Mechelen, where food, construction, and consumer goods, with a focus on furniture, textiles, electronics, and bikes, emerge as the most interesting value chains. It's important to note here that in the exercise, we also included so-called supporting sectors. Mechelen appeared to have a comparatively strong economic fiber in the logistics sector and in the field of digital technology, as well as several institutions of higher education, all of which have a leverage function in the circular economy. And then last part of my talk, once priority value chains have been identified, the question arises of which instruments can be used. And roughly speaking, we can distinguish between three major types of interventions that are possible for a regional or local government. The first is making your own organization more circular, which implies basing your procurement policy on the circular economy principles, but also building knowledge about the circular economy across departments. A second type of intervention is defining objectives, priority areas of action, and milestones through road mapping exercises. And thirdly, regional and local governments are uniquely placed to bring together actors from different sectors and societal segments and catalyze circular economy action. To activate stakeholders, governments can use a whole set of instruments, from softer ones such as awareness raising, knowledge sharing, capacity building, matchmaking, or financial support, to harder ones such as taxation, permit granting, and legislation. Traditionally, instruments such as fiscal incentives and regulation are seen as having the greatest capacity to bring about change. But as societal challenges become more complex and interrelated and public resources tend to diminish, the importance of these soft instruments to achieve policy goals increases. Take, for instance, the circular economy roadmap of the city of Leuven, the first circular economy city strategy in Flanders, in which, as you can see, most measures can be classified as soft. To conclude, some quick examples from Belgium for each of the types of so-called soft policy instruments. In terms of awareness raising, Leuven has set up a circular concept store to increase awareness and put local circular entrepreneurs in the spotlight. Another nice example is Kosh, an app to find sustainable brands in your neighborhood. An example of capacity building, the Impact Factory in Mechelen, was already mentioned by Elmar, is a brownfield that is being transformed into a circular incubator. And another example is the city of Leuven, which recently launched a physical and virtual materials bank for used building materials. In terms of facilitation and shaping of partnerships, several green deals on circular construction, on circular procurement have been set up at the regional level in Belgium to enable mutual learning among circular economy pioneers. Another interesting development in terms of building partnerships is the creation of local hubs for circular and social entrepreneurship throughout the Flemish region. And then finally, financial support. The 3 regional governments in Belgium have subsidy programs in place to support circular projects, some generic, some focused on specific flows, specific sectors or target groups. And in addition, we see that some cities, such as Antwerp, also provide subsidies for circular innovation projects. So what are our takeaways on how to work on the circular transition at decentralized level? First of all, create common long-term ambition and make sure you have political support. Set up a coordination between city departments and also appoint a coordinator, a coordinating team. Raise awareness among citizens and coach entrepreneurs. Support bottom-up initiatives through funding, matchmaking, offering space, but also through your own procurement, circular procurement, and last but not least, communicate success stories. So that was my contribution, and then Asset, feel free to share your questions in the chat. And I'll give the floor to Emma. Emma Börjesson is a project manager at the Environmental Department of the City of Malmö. The City of Malmö strives to become one of the world's most sustainable cities and was very recently awarded Sweden's most sustainable city by one of the leading sustainability journals in Sweden. Emma has been working on sustainable development in the public sectors for 10 years and the last 3 years focusing on circular economy. She's involved in several European and national projects on circular procurement and is also exploring how the City of Malmö can become a circular organization. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you,
Just
Helen.
a quick intervention. Helen, do we have a poll?
Okay, yeah, my apologies. I forgot the fact that we have a small poll.
We are going interactive for 3 minutes. I'm so sorry, Emma.
No, my apologies. Indeed, Elmar, go ahead.
Yes, just to energize your minds or to have a question to think about your own situation. Is your region or city already working on the circular economy transition? So that's the question that we would like to pose. And you can, of course, either speak through your own experience as a city official, or you can speak on behalf of the things that you see around you. So it's in the screen right now. Please tick your box. There's only one answer available. This is very scientifically justified, of course. Is your region or city already working on the circular economy transition? Yes, we are doing it based on a vision, strategy, and action plan altogether. Yes, we are doing it on the basis of ad hoc initiatives. No, not yet. This is quite new to us. Or indirectly, yes, it's happening under the umbrella of other policy teams, but not as such. So the answers are coming in. Yes, 8, 7, at least 16 answers. So that's a good representation of what's happening. Very good to see that there is none of us which really sees it as a new topic that's not being approached and it's not being developed at this point. So most of you, about half, say yes, we have a strategy, a vision, and action plan. So that's a good. I will tick that as well. Yeah, nice to see. I think it's ready, Helen. This one. And
yes,
also,
you can introduce the next question, Elmar.
Yeah. So what does your the circular economy governance in your region or city look like? how is it managed, more or less? Is it managed by one department or team, a dedicated department or team, or one or two persons which are really having the time and the space to work on it? Is it a cooperation between different departments with some issues of cooperation sometimes? Is it managed by external companies, and is it so that these external stakeholders are being informed about the things that are happening at the local level or in the policies? Or are these external stakeholders really involved and engaged to co-create and develop new plans and actions? So different answers are possible. You can tick two boxes if you like. Please go ahead. Overlapping answers are possible. And actually you might just as well tick them all. The answers are coming in. In our experience, it's quite important to have at least someone being a coordinator or a team that's coordinating different actions. But it's just as well possible that different departments are working on the topics within their fields of expertise, within their competences, and trying to organize a circular economy for the local level by cooperation between different departments. So thank you. These votes are in, and I'm so glad to see that a lot of you also say that external stakeholders are being involved, are being part of creating plans and actions together. Thank you. It's now time for Emma's presentation.
Thank you so much. I will just share my screen once more. There. So thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Emma, and I'm a project manager at the environmental department in City of Malmö. And I will talk to you about our journey towards becoming a circular city. And I could say that I recognize a lot of the things that Helen told us about, and you will recognize examples about how I have been working. And just to give you some short context before, the city of Malmö is the third largest city in Sweden. It's situated in the south of Sweden, very close to Copenhagen and Denmark. We are a very young city. We are more than 50% are under 35 years old. We have a lot of different nationalities. More than 150 languages are spoken here. We are the fastest growing large city in Sweden. We have a focus on sustainable urban development. And just like Helen told you, we were newly awarded Sweden's most sustainable city. And I would also say that we work a lot with mobility management. We're a bike city, so to say. 25% of all journeys are made by bike. We also have facing challenges, of course. The climate crisis is one of them, but we also have challenges with high unemployment and social injustice. And I think that's also something we're trying to approach when we talk about circular economy and the possibilities there. And now I'll just give you a brief update on our policies, how they look like in this area. We have two different policies and documents that have been newly decided upon from the politicians. And one is our circular plan, and it's a plan for waste prevention and resource efficiency. And here it says for the municipal organization, for instance, that reuse of products shall increase and the residual waste shall decrease by 20% till 2030. And of course, it also has targets for the waste of the citizens. And just 2 or 3 weeks ago, our new environmental program was also taken by the politicians in Malmö. And here it's being said that we should have zero net emissions by 2030, and also that we should increase resource efficiency and circularity within the city. And of course, we had environmental program before that as well, but it was launched in 2009, and then circular economy wasn't really a thing as it is today. So it's a little bit difficult to say exactly when our journey towards making Malmö more circular began, but I would say that what has helped us in this journey and what made our ambitions raise is that we have been looking for external money, external funding to make this transition. And just to give you some brief examples before I move on to two examples that I will talk a little bit more about, is that, for instance, we launched something called a smart map. It's a map where all sharing initiatives and circular initiatives are shown. And this was co-created with citizens and NGOs. And for instance, you can see where the bike kitchen is, where we also have a big makerspace. Of course, we have our lending bikes. We have the leisure library is shown on the map where you could lend sport stuff, etc. We also have something called Malmö Återbygdepå, which is a place it's been up and running for many years, and it's a place where you can go as a private person, but also as a company, to buy reused or secondhand construction materials like bricks, windows, toilet seats, etc. And this is driven by the city together with the local waste company, and it was launched not to be really a part of the circular economy from the beginning, but more as a way of getting people with distance to the labor market, getting jobs and knowledge, etc. In the harbor area of Malmö, we were working with the urban symbiosis, trying to see what kind of waste could be other companies' treasures. So it's been a project that's been going on for many years, and it's also led to changing of policies in this area, for instance. And in this area, a facility for automatic textile sorting was opened last year, and it's the world's biggest facility like this in the world. So we're very keen on seeing how this will change and make the textile chain more circular in the future. And now I will just dig a little bit deeper into two examples where we have been working with sharing and circular economy for many years. And one of them is Segerpark. It's a new city district and a testbed for sustainability and sharing. And this is area that is being built right now. It's old hospital area in the outskirts of Malmö. I would say it's about, Malmö isn't that big, so it's about 20 minutes by bike to the city center. And here, once again, you can see how from the beginning of the planning program that began already in 2014, we have funding from different projects during this time. So we started with one project where the sustainability strategy was formed for this area. But then what really raised the ambition about sharing and circular economy for this area was back in 2015, where Malmö was part of something called Nordic Build Challenge, which was an open multidisciplinary need-driven competition to develop and visualize Nordic innovative solution. And Malmö's theme for this competition was sharing for affordable and smart cities. And the different architectural solutions that came up during this competition has been like a red thread from 2015-2016 when developing this area further, also during the land allocation and during developers dialogue. And since the area is not being ready yet, it's a little bit difficult to talk about results, but there are some results that we could talk about already. For instance, the locally the municipal owned parking company has during this process began to change their the way of looking at parking, and now they're changing parking houses into mobility hubs. And in this area, they will build a completely circular mobility hub. And the hub is being built also for being repurposed, so you can change how the building will be used in the future. And it's has started to being built, but not yet ready. And there's been individual sustainability coaching talks with the developers, and they are actually also, they have signed with the city planning department that they will have sharing functions in their houses, but also that they will collaborate with other developers. During all of the process, we have had an NGO working with shared possibilities, the communal ones. Also in this area, new types of developers have been given land allocations, like collective houses and developers that are driven more of ideology than making money. And also, I would say that this has led to better collaboration internally, even though it's been struggle sometimes. The environmental department and the city planning department can have sometimes different way of working, etc. And the other examples I will just dig into a little bit is how we've been working with circular procurement. And there also it started with a project in 2017. We were part of an Interreg funded project called Circular PP, and we had a focus on secondhand furniture there, but also related services, because we noticed that we throw away a lot of furniture and we wanted to be able to repair them better, but also be able to sell them to the suppliers. And we started with furniture because we had a very engaged procurement officer. She was already interested in circular economy and she was willing to try something new. We knew that there was a local market, and we had talks with them very early on to talk about our needs and how they could help us with them. And also during this project, we had a lot of education seminars for procurement officers, trying to raise the awareness, etc. And if you just see some results or lessons learned from this pilot, that the collaboration with the suppliers were very important. We made this priority list. That was not really any political decisions about that, but we almost communicated as that you should, of course, use what you already have. If you have furniture within the department, you should use that. You could also use the swapping system that we have in the city of Malmö, and that you should then buy secondhand furniture and last buy new furniture. And we can see that first year we bought 10% reused furniture, and for the second year with the contract it was about 15%. We know that we have saved a little bit less than 200,000 kilos of CO2 for the first year. And this really was a positive example to lead the way towards more circular ambitions within procurement. So just to sum it up, a little bit and give you some tips. I think this goes in line very much what Helen just told us. But for us, it was, when we talked about procurement, it was really good to start with something easy that was likely to become a success. For instance, this procurement on second-hand furniture. It wasn't the most circular procurement, but it started something, and after that we have been having circular ambitions in catering, in signage, in entrance mats, in ICT, etc. So this really started something. Of course, also test beds has been important for us to be able to try out new solutions, try out new types of collaboration, and this was made possible by the external funding that we had been able to get to try these things out. Of course, there's also risk with test beds, and that can be that it's not mainstreamed into the normal activities then. But I think, yeah, the examples I gave has really been mainstream, but always, I think, when you do project and testbed, you do learn something that you will take into your normal working life. And then also it's interesting to talk about policy or practice first. We didn't have a policy for circular economy back in 2014-15 when we started working with this topic. But I think that the different examples we could give has now made the politicians willing to take on circular economy policies, etc. Of course, it's always very important to find engaged allies and also to work with behavior change, even if it's the citizens or the internal organization. It's different to take. You have to take into account that it takes time to change people's behavior and even your own behavior sometimes. Be part of networks. I think that's been really helpful for the city of Malmö also. Our mayor, for instance, she's part of eClay network, but also Covenant of Mayors, for instance, where the stress is the importance of the role for cities towards the change we have to make when it comes to climate changes, circular economy, etc. So for us, that's been a driver also, these networks. And then monitoring is very valuable, can be difficult, and I think sometimes we make it more difficult than it has to be. When we did the monitoring and looked at the statistic, the numbers for how much CO2 we saved buying circular furniture, we didn't look for the perfect solution, and we were just very open with that when we communicated the numbers afterwards. Statistics also very good when you look in how we work internally with the different departments in the city of Malmö. We know that if we give them statistics about how much environmental friendly products, circular products they buy, etc., they are more willing to increase that if they see that the numbers is not as good as other departments, for instance. And the last on my list is just good examples that leads to raising the awareness for the politicians and the citizens, etc. And also, as we as a municipality, as an organization, have to lead and also showing the citizens and companies that we walk the walk, not only talking about making a change. That was just a few examples from Malmö. If you want to know more, you could just contact me via mail or LinkedIn. If you're interested in circular procurement, you could take a look at one project that we're working on now, which is called ProCirc. It's just to look for it on Google. You will find a lot of inspiration examples there. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Emma, for sharing your experience. We'll first listen to the testimonial by Prato, and then we'll open the floor for questions to all speakers. So let me introduce you to our next speaker, Valerio Barberis. He's an architect and carries out teaching and research activities within the Department of Architectural Design of the University of Florence. He's also Deputy Mayor on Urban Planning, Environment and Circular Economy of the Municipality of Prato. Mr. Barberis, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, and of course, thank you for this invitation. The webinar is very inspiring, so it's always a pleasure to be part of this meeting in order to share the experiences that we are developing. But of course, we are developing this experience because we have been part of several networks where we have the chance to meet very positive person and very and strong professionals. So let me share my screen. Allora. Eccolo qui. Okay, can you just confirm that you're seeing my screen? Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
So first of all, let me introduce the theme that I would like to share with you this morning. Prato, it's a middle European cities of around 200,000 people, the third in terms of inhabitants of the central Italy after Rome and Florence. And the city is inserted among the metropolitan area, which is formed by the city of Florence, Prato, and Pistoia, that counts around 1.5 million people. So the city is a classic medium-sized European city, but inserted in a metropolitan area and with very specific dimensions. From a, let's say, from a social point of view, the city hosts 130 different ethnical groups. And so it's a kind of very open city to social inclusion, considering that, for instance, between the 1950 and 1970, the city developed from 75,000 people to 150,000 people. And so this was because of the growing of what was and became one of the biggest textile districts in the world. And still today, the city of Prato so hosts one of the probably the most important textile district in Europe, and one of the most important in terms of circularity and sustainability in the world. And at the same time, now it hosts also one of the biggest textile fast fashion district in Europe, thanks basically to the Chinese entrepreneurship. As part of our strategy, we are developing a program which is called the Prato Circular City that starts from the experience of our participation in the Partnership on Circular Economy. Actually, as you see in this slide, the experience of the city of Prato in the transition to circular economy is to capitalize the experience that we've developed within the Partnership on Circular Economy in the European Urban Agenda. And today, this morning, there are a lot of our friends of Friend City that were sharing the same experience that we shared starting to the end of 2016. And so we are developing the same working methodology of the partner that was developed in the partnership. And Prato Circular City is a strong governance model to share experiences at urban level and to develop urban policies between the municipality, the local university, and the entrepreneurs and the stakeholders. And the objective is to develop a methodology and the governance model based on the vision of the city considered as a kind of ecological system, where the behavior of the city and the metabolism of the city should be circular and sustainable. So the starting point and what is really relevant for our experience was the participation on the urban agenda for the EU in the Partnership of Circular Economy. The partnership was coordinated by the city of Oslo And there were a lot of cities and regions, for instance, the Flemish region with Ovam, but also Maribor city, Slovenia, and the city of Prato, of course, and so on. So it was very relevant, the experience, because for the first time at EU level, as you know, there was the chance for cities to be part of the in the designing of the future processes, in the future programs of that we are now facing for the program 21-28. And so it was very important for us to be part of this network, because we finally have acquired a knowledge of the relevance of the city of Prato, especially of the textile district, from the point of view of urban policies to develop also an industrial policies. So if we think that in the future of Europe, we are dealing with the dimension of cities as relevant for the transitions of economics and nations to circular economy, then we have to face urban policies and develop urban policies at all the different levels. What is important to understand, maybe this is quite a specific situation of Italian cities, is that Italian cities very often host textile industrial district. It means, for instance, that if you think that in the city of Prato, the textile district produces around 3% of the entire textile European production, it means that if we are developing urban policies on textile for the textile district of Prato, we are developing at the same time also industrial policies at European level. And what is relevant is that it's quite simple to develop such instruments of circularity when you deal with thousands of different entrepreneurs working all in the same industrial sector. Italian industrial district, from this point of view, can be really an important laboratories at European level, because they the strange things of Italian district is that they are formed of thousands of different very small entrepreneurs that all together make important industrial district at European level. But what is relevant is that they are all linked together in a form that was a form of industrial symbiosis that came out from the, let's say, from a pragmatic approach, where what was the waste from one entrepreneurs became second-hand materials for another one. And so it was an informal way where district developed this form of circularity. So within the urban agenda, the city of Prato, together with other cities and regions, coordinated three different working groups. One on the water reuse. The city of Prato hosts one of the biggest, probably the biggest industrial aqueduct in Europe. The civil and industrial water are collected in one depuration plant, and then after several treatments, the water is treated several times with in order to bring it back very clear, and then this water is pumped in an industrial aqueduct serving all the industrial areas of the city. And so the textile industries are using circular water, we can say it. So within the Partnership on Circular Economy, the city, together with other partners, developed a position paper on the better legislation for the reuse of water in industrial and agricultural field. Then another action that we've developed together with the Partnership on Nature-Based Solutions and Sustainable Land Use is the reuse of spaces and buildings. This is a handbook which is quite, which is very interesting for the development of a circular approach to urban planning programs. So the first thing to understand for cities in the future is that we have to use better use the existing what exists. Generally, cities has a lot of unused or underused spaces and buildings, and so what do we have first to do? If we want to reduce the consumption of soil, we have to use in a smart way the existing spaces and buildings, public and private, in order to better use our city. This is a sustainable approach that needs a strong approach with a data-driven approach, where cities can be should have a urban reuse agency in charge of collecting all the data coming from the city of unused or underused spaces, and then putting these data in the strategies of the city in order to share communication and to share the goals of reusing and putting and creating new opportunities for entrepreneurs and social innovation. And then another action implemented is a publication of a toolkit on the pay-as-you-throw toolkit, which is, of course, one of the strongest way for cities, for waste management system to develop circular economy strategies in the field of waste management. So what is important in our approach is that we are trying to develop an overall strategy which is the vision of the city, which is inserted in a document which is called the Urban Agenda, Prato Urban Agenda, where the main objectives that we are developing are these that you see here: digital transition of the city, circular transition of the city, environmental transition, and altogether consider within a strategy of social inclusions, where, of course, the starting point are the Sustainable Development Goals and also the 14 priority themes of the Urban Agenda. So our approach to the transition to circular economy is part of a bigger strategies where all the different actions that the city is providing for entrepreneurs and public policies are put together within a bigger vision. So as for the digital transition, there are several programs, the Prato Smart City program, the digital agenda of the city of Prato, and for the transition and the development of the 5G technology and Industry 4.0, there are Prato Manufacturing 5G and Industry 4.0 program. The environmental transition is a strong focus that we are developing in the city, starting from 2014. And so there are several programs, the PIEs, coming from the 2020 strategy and now the 2030 strategy. And then the PUMS, it's the program for sustainable urban mobility, and a strategy for smart mobility and logistics sector. And then what is very important in our strategies are the urban forestation programs, where we are working a city within two different approaches and programs. One is the urban forestation program. It's an overall strategy at urban level that tries to link public policies and also private policies for the transition to the carbon neutral products. So working together with the stakeholders and textile industries in order developing the urban forestry program together with carbon-free strategies at industrial level. And then there's a program which is called Prato Urban Jungle, that is urban forestation program developing public health strategies, and that I'm going to talk a little bit later at the end of my presentation. And then, of course, there is the circular transition program, which is focusing, let's say, on two main programs. One, of course, is a strategy developed together with the local entrepreneurs association, which is the textile and clothing district of Prato transition to circular economy. And so considering the textile district as a production center for sustainable fashion. And then there are the real programs for the circular transition, Prato Circular City and RECO. RECO is the Circular Economy Festival on Tuscan region, that is hosted and organized by the city of Prato, where the activity is to develop and share best practices, experiences at European level, and starting from the experiences of the industrial district of Tuscany. For instance, in the city of Prato, there's the textile district, but in the district of Scandicci, there is the fashion district, the city of Santa Croce, the leather district, the city of Lucca, the paper district, the city of Carrara, the marble district. So there are several industrial districts working in fashion and in several industrial sector, and they all are focusing, and they all have a strong tradition on circular economy. Cosa è successo? Ecco. The festival starts from the experience of this district and focus on a sharing communication between the district, and also sharing the experience of international experiences on circular economy on different levels. So RECO, it's a program that is trying to develop a kind of very popular way of approaching the theme of circular economy. So trying to communicate at different levels, the level of the stakeholders, level of researchers, but also the level of general citizens, in order to create an awareness on the theme of circularity. So working at regional and national level. And then, of course, we have the Prato Circular City program, where the city is working on an overall vision where the three main themes developed within the Partnership on Circular Economy, and the three main themes of the urban agenda, and so the better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge objectives are now put together in an overall vision of the city, where the themes that can be developed at urban levels, and so urban agriculture, the residential area, and of course the production, trades, and services, are put together in a vision where innovation, regeneration, and especially social cohesion are considered as the main objectives of the activity. So the Prato Circular City it's a working model where stakeholders, researchers, and municipality meet in working groups organized by the city of Prato together with the University of Prato, and where you see that there are 4 different tables. Table 1 is on textile and clothing district and industrial symbiosis. Table 2 on management of urban resources. Table 3 on circular consumption, and Table 4 on sustainable and urban agricultural systems. Every table is formed by several working groups, and the working groups can be activated by stakeholders questioning on specific themes. So, of course, Table 1 on textile and clothing district deals with the dimension, for instance, of to communicate and to create a communication at district level, so at the level of the industrial district of Prato, considering and emphasizing the sustainability and circularity of its approaches, but also working on the development of proposals at regional, national, and European level on the waste legislation models, or also incentives for the textiles and the use of reused textile products, and so on. Table 2 is the management of urban resources, and so there's one working group which is coordinated by the society which is in charge of the waste management. It's called ALIA, and so dealing with all the different aspects of where like OVAM, a waste management society can be involved in the transition to circular economy and the behavior of citizens. But then very important and very relevant is also the development of regulamentations and rules of the municipality and of the administration at local level, where regulamentations and rules, for instance, on green public procurements for the public sector of public works, it's very important, but also regulamentations for the private sector of building and construction, and so emphasizing and giving, for instance, incentives in the for the building sites that are using products that comes from the industry of reuse materials. Table 3 is on circular consumptions, and so there are several working groups working with the shops, with schools, and so what experiences working in the dimension of creating an awareness on circular consumption and creating opportunities for sustainable behaviors of citizens to have prices and so on. And finally, table 4 is on sustainable urban agricultural system, and so trying to connect urban and peri-urban agricultural strategies together with food policies at urban level. And so, for instance, working in order to create 0 kilometers strategies for the sale of vegetables, but also connecting urban and peri-urban agricultural producers to the local markets and especially with the public canteen. Together with the Prato Circular City strategy is our, as I told you, action plan on urban forestry. As you see from this slide, the city of Prato is a very dense city in its urban tissue, but within this very dense urban tissue, there are important and very big natural areas. This is a drawing made by Stefano Boeri Architetti on the action plan of urban forestry, where of course the green areas within the city are conceptually represented as a forest. But what is important is that the city is working together with the experience of this two double vision. From one side, the urban tissue is driven by urban policies of reusing, and in order to make it easy to reuse the existing urban fabric. On the other side, the open parts of the city are coordinated by the action plan of urban forestry, where so the overall sustainable vision of the city is coordinated by an overall vision where urban existing tissue are part of a strategy of urban reuse and policies of circular economy at urban level on urban planning strategies. And on the same time, on the other side, the open areas of the city are coordinated by a program of action plan of urban forestry. And what is relevant is that there's a theme that puts together the urban forestry strategy and the circular economy strategy on the buildings. That is the program Prato Urban Jungle, where the existing city, so the very dense urban tissues of the city, the peripheries, and so the parts of the city that are the most responsible of the environmental crisis that we are facing, try to become a part of the answer instead to the with an environmental approach where existing buildings becomes a kind of buildings where to be completely renaturalized through the use of nature-based solutions. And so here we have a strategy that puts together the reuse of existing buildings in order to create conditions in the city to be to put in a new way, in a new vision, what already exists. So office buildings, residential buildings, and industrial buildings, as you see in that slide, together with nature-based solutions. And so with a strategy of considering the existing city as part of the solution of a problem, and so trying to let the existing city become environmentally active. Thank you for your attention, and so I'm waiting eventually for
Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to invite everyone to share their questions for Emma and Valerio via the chat because we are running a little bit late. So I propose to pass the floor to Nicolai Jacobi from ICLE, but so do share your questions via the chat. Emma, Valerio, I saw that there were already a couple of questions in the chat, so also a warm call to you to answer these questions. And if we have a little bit of time left at the end, we can still do a Q&A session for all speakers. But in the meantime, I'd like to introduce Nicolai Jacobi, who is a senior officer in ICLE's Europe's Sustainability, Resources, Climate and Resilience team, working on issues related to circular economy, climate and energy planning, and bioeconomy since 3 years. Nicolai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for the opportunity to be here in this webinar. As you said, my name is Nicolai. I work for ICLE Europe, and as some of you may know, ICLE is a European city network active on different sustainability topics. Also, of course, on sustainable consumption, on circular economy, and so on. I have prepared sort of a full-blown presentation, which I'm not sure that we have the time for it to be given, but I will try to maybe jump between a few points that I wanted to make. And one point is a bit maybe different from what we've heard now. That kind of for me is a good way to understand the complexity of the sustainability challenges that we are facing. Is sort of a historic perspective, looking at material extraction over the past century. That is what you see here in the graph until 1900, and seeing economic activity moving alongside with it. That is the sort of the white curve, and that picture goes fundamentally against what many economists and environmentalists have been claiming in the 90s and so on, that we through our so-called end of the pipe solutions, efficiency gains, we would achieve an absolute decoupling between GDP growth and environmental consumption, if you will, and therefore also the negative effects that are associated with that. So, and we see that this has not happened, and for me, this is at least one good way to understand why circular economy has gained momentum so much in the last 10 years, or maybe even a bit more, as a very cross-cutting way of fundamentally reorganizing, let's say, the way we produce and consume, because working on symptoms at the end of the metabolism, if you will, has not brought the desired effects. And for me, that's kind of helpful, and that is also one of the explanations why cities are increasingly in the focus as hubs for organizing production and consumption, and where most of the energy and most of the material throughput is occurring. Also, where most of the GDP is being generated. And this is a bit why I think, in my view, cities are increasingly key or increasingly in the focus in the circular economy debate. Now I have to jump maybe a little bit because I think we are running a bit out of time. Of course, cities are, of course, vulnerable, and on the one hand side, I think that is very clear. But on the other side, they offer also a lot of opportunities that are particular to cities. When you think about population density, when you think about, I think it was mentioned by Circular Flanders, by Elmar, that we have a huge urban building stock that can potentially work as an urban mine if we quantify things, if we qualify things, if we make the right standards available to harvest those. but also there's urban consumption patterns which allow potentially for economies of scale to work. And another thing I wanted to mention is that I think works very well with what Helen has presented about the difference between hard and soft policy interventions is a sort of a way to cluster local governments' levers to impact on the circularity transition, because one thing that we see in our work on this topic a lot is that there is still need, I think, in my view, to understand a bit about the goals and the options that cities have. So I think there are competing goals that are, let's say, across the spectrum within the circular economy. One being, let's say, prioritizing job and growth, for instance, and one being, trying to achieve degrowth and sufficiency, for instance. These are, let's say, the two extremes that are all part of the circular economy debate. And I think when thinking about strategizing this topic for us at the city level, this is something that is not really spoken of clearly, but it makes a huge difference, and it also makes a difference of how trade-offs are being handled when they occur, and how they're being prioritized. And I think for that, it's also important to understand to somehow talk about the policy levers, and the OECD and EMF are clustering this quite nicely, I find. They talk about cities as enablers, as promoters, and as facilitators of the circular economy. Enabling being, of course, kind of directly affecting through policy setting, through taxation and so on. Promoting being kind of focusing on their own administration, working on overcoming silo thinking within the administration and so on, but also working in sort of a multi-level perspective with higher level governance entities, regional and national and so on. And facilitating being, of course, what we've heard from Malmö and others, that really being a platform in the territory for citizens, for businesses, for other actors, universities, to kind of like set the agenda and have a dialogue and go on from there. And I think this is a kind of a helpful way to cluster things. And of course, it goes also, there's also a decreasing curve of control with these measures, because, and that is, I think, the link to what Helen was saying, that of course the soft measures is something, so facilitating dialogue is something that cities can do whenever they want, pretty much, let's say. They have a large degree of control over this, and of course with the regulatory measures on the other side of the spectrum, being something that is hard to achieve on their own, oftentimes because of the subsidiary, of course, federal state principles we have, and therefore mandates are also, I think, crucial to talk about, to kind of identify where are the key points of engagement for cities. And of course, we know them, and we have very city people in there, and the vice mayor has spoken, so you know all this, that what these mandates are. But I think just to keep them, just to mention them, and yeah, maybe just to close it off, we have when talking about developing a strategy, I think there have been a lot of very key examples been spoken of before. Just to reiterate, I think that's really the starting point, and also it's one of the key things a city can do. And there, it doesn't really matter whether the strategy then focuses mainly on soft measures, or whether it's the basis for really a full-blown, hard intervention, a strategy that has indicators and baseline and so on. But that's the starting point. And ICLE has recently developed, together with a couple of other partners, as part of the European Circular Cities Declaration, to which I'm going to come in a second, developed sort of a a dynamic model for kind of capturing the circular transition locally that has four layers. That is just one example of how you could do it. Let's say that talks about actors, local governments being one of them, that collaborate between themselves, of course, enact also policy and affect circular behavior in businesses and in individuals. That in turn has an impact on the physical economy, so closes loops and harmful resource use, which is the core of the transition for us. And those closed loops in turn have an impact on human well-being and environmental quality. I think because Elmar or Helen have also asked me to reflect a bit on monitoring and evaluating these measures. I think this is really helpful when thinking about when trying to measure or to evaluate some of these interventions is to ask yourself what are you really measuring, because you can measure the causal link between each of these layers that I was describing now. And that is really something entirely different. And I think oftentimes in strategies, this is also that I've seen at least is not sufficiently well thought through. What are you really measure? What can you measure, and what you cannot measure, maybe, or not sufficiently measure? And this is also, I think, a crucial point to kind of tackle this very difficult topic of measuring circular economy somehow. Is to understand also the limits that this has, and that perhaps there's no single answer, no universal answer at the moment, at least. I've planned to elaborate on this in detail, but I'm going to spare you with this discussion for now. I think we're a bit out of time. I just want to briefly highlight the European Circular Cities Declaration that has been developed with a number of partners that you see here. Among them also Circular Flanders, actually, and many more. That is sort of a political declaration of four cities that are committed to driving circular economy in their territory, and the declaration, well, is designed to accelerate the transition in those territories. It is a way to communicate a commitment, of course, among those cities, but also within the European Union institutions and the European Commission. It has a shared vision that I was in part just describing with this model, but there's of course more to it. Of course, also sort of a sector approach. It in our view is also a way to kind of promote multi-level advocacy, if you will, towards your political leaders at regional level or at national level, really showing what you're doing, and that there's a way to organize this commitment. And of course, there's a community of support organizations that some of them you saw in the recent slide, that hold a lot of knowledge, that are key, organizations in Europe, and that hold a lot of knowledge on this topic and can support you in your journey. These are some of the current signatories. There are 43. You see that it's quite nicely spread over some countries up until now, and this is again some of the levers that I was describing, and on the right side here you see the 10 commitments that this declaration entails, really reaching from awareness raising and vision development, strategy development, to leveraging public procurement and applying, where possible, of course, economic incentives, regulation, and lastly, of course, trying at least to make progress in monitoring also this development. The secretariat, which is ICLE, does for now. I mean, the profile is still kind of developing. The initiative is also kind of new still, so we are still, let's say, open to suggestions and developing our portfolio, if you will, of services or things that this group is doing. But for now, we're doing quarterly webinars on topics that are relevant, particularly for cities that are starting their circular economy journey. We're doing newsletters, we're doing presentations, we're doing other events, and of course we are fostering bilateral exchange between cities, but also between cities and support partners. Yeah, with this was my quick contribution. I hope it was not too long. So back to you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Nikolai, and I'm sure Nikolai is available for any further questions you have on the Circular City Declarations or the work of ICLE. I would like to thank everyone and especially the speakers for their contribution to this webinar. Just a quick reminder that there's more to come. If you would like to dive deeper into one of the soft policy instruments introduced today, you can join our second webinar on May 25th, and registration is still possible. I have added the registration link on the slide. Well, thank you very much for your participation. Keep an eye on the Möbius website or on our LinkedIn Möbius Circular Economy and Sustainability page for the recording and all the presentations of today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Helen. Thank you, Valerio, Nikolai, Emma, and all the participants. See you next time.
Bye-bye. See you
Bye-bye.
next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.